Welcome, Comadres and friends. I'm Dr. Nora de Hoyos Comstock, national and international founder of Las Comadres para las Americas. The leadership team and I are pleased to have you join us for tonight's teleconference as we are beginning our 17th year. It has been our privilege to support Latino authors throughout these 17 years, and we look forward to many more years to come. We'd also like to extend a warm welcome to readers following us on our live Twitter chat at Read Latino Lit. Tonight, please help us welcome authors Norma, Elia, Cantú, Claire Jimenez, and Karen Gonzales. Their interviews will begin shortly. Before we get started, just a few housekeeping notes. Please keep yourselves on mute. You can keep your videos on, but remember, movement is distracting if you keep your videos on. We suggest you put yourself on speaker mode, but gallery works just as well. I like to look at people, so I do the gallery thing. If you have any questions or comments, please put them in the chat and we will try to get to them. First, let's start with our book club's history. Comadre Tess?
Buenas noches a todos. I am Tess Tobin, project manager of the Las Comadres and Friends Book Club. Our first book club gathering was in July 2004 in New York in Comadre Maria Ferrer's apartment. After a brief hiatus, Norma Comstock re-envisioned and relaunched the book club nationwide to promote the work of Latino authors to every book lover, to bring our community to bookstores, and to support our Latino writers. We started the teleconferences in October 2007. This year, we are celebrating our 17th year, and we are very delighted to be sharing works by Latino authors with all of you. We created the teleconference and book club to entice everyone to read more Latino authors and to learn about Latino roots and the different perspectives on Latino culture and heritage. Our book club and Zoom teleconferences are open to all, not just Latinos. We are creating a space for everyone to explore the Latino writer's mind and soul as portrayed through the written word. We encourage you to join our local book clubs in your city or time zone. We have clubs in 12 cities that are meeting virtually and now some in person. There is sure to be one that can fit your schedule. If your city doesn't have one, why not help us start one? For more information about our book club, visit our website at latinolit.com. So please invite others to join us. Comadre Maria, take it away.
Welcome. Thank you for joining us tonight. My name is Maria Ferrer. I'm the executive director of Las Comadres para las Americas. Our first interview is with award-winning poet and author, Dr. Nora Elia Cantú, who was born in Nuevo Laredo to a Tejana mother and a Mexicano father. She currently serves, as the Noreen R. and T. Frank Murchison Distinguished Professor of the Humanities at Trinity University in San Antonio, where she teaches courses in Latinx studies, folklore, and creative writing. Her creative writing focuses on the U.S.-Mexican border and includes her novelas Canicula and Bayanuelas, as well as a poetry collection, Meditación Fronteriza. Interviewing Norma is Dr. Gabriela Gutierrez Imus, who is currently a professor in modern languages and women, gender and sexuality studies, and formerly the Teeleen Piggott McCone Endowed Chair in the Humanities at Seattle University. She is a polylingual poet, critic, and cultural worker. She is the author, editor of 8 books of poetry, criticism and culture, and multiple articles, encyclopedia entries, and opinion pieces. Take it away, Gabriela. Gabriela, you're on mute.
So happy to be here. Thank you both for welcoming us, for including us in this. I've spent the last 25 years oh no, 35 years studying Norma Elia Cantu's oeuvre. I wrote half of my dissertation on her, and I'm always mesmerized by what she's doing next. There's so much I have to say about her. I do want to say that she is, in my opinion, that there's no other intellectual like her or Chicana writer that has been celebrated so much, and that I'm so happy that we finally got to the space where this essential work is celebrated during our lifetime, because we didn't do that for Gloria Anzaldua, for example. And it's gotta be en vida, hermana, en vida. It's gotta be now. And so I am so grateful for your organization, that you're doing this. And I have many, many, many questions for Norma that I think will open up, right, the gates to her speaking. She's very modest. I have to say that too. And I wanted to enter deep into the conversation. We all know you've done so much. Canicula, Snapshots of a Girlhood en la Frontera has been taught across the country. It's translated into Spanish. It's been read all over. I presented on Canicula in Colombia several years ago, and it is can be found bilingual. But I have so much to say about your literature, but I really want to know more about what you consider your literary legacy, your feminist legacy, your intellectual legacies.
Wow, that's a lot of legacies, Gabriela. Pero primero que nada, muchas gracias. Thank you, Nora, Tess, the entire team at Maria at Las Comadres Latino Book Clubs. This is amazing. I've been on several times for I've interviewed people and I've been interviewed, but this is really special because Gabriela is here. So thank you, Gabriela. I also want to acknowledge we're highlighting this book, Chicana Portraits, and the artist who was the original impetus for the book is with us, Raquel Valle Sentíes. Thank you, Raquel, for the beautiful work that you did in producing the artwork of the 12 authors, Chicana authors. And I guess the legacy, to answer your question, is tied to this book because it is about todas como hermanas coming together, in this case, between the pages of a book, between the covers of a book and the pages of the book. But it actually, and I was talking to a college classroom via Zoom earlier today, and one of the students asked almost a similar question about what do I see for the future? And I hope that what I see and what will happen is that more of us can be taught and can be read by ourselves. When I was in college or high school, these books were not there. And so for one, this book gives us the biographies of 12 leading Chicana writers and Raquel's brilliant portraits of the writers is like a complement. They're critical biographies. So I guess that's part of the legacy, that I am like a facilitator, like building a bridge between the past, the writers from the past, and then the future, so that it's there. You mentioned my novels, but also the poetry. I have a lot of anthologies because one of the goals as an academic is to bring others along with me. So in the anthologies, like this one, the writers are scholars in this case, but the whole intergenerational. There are some brandly minted PhDs contributing, like Megan Solomon, who wrote about Ana Castillo, and some very seasoned writers like yourself, or as Mary Pat Brady and some others that have been around, have written
Mhm.
brilliant critical analysis, and now they're lending their voice to this. So muchas gracias to all of you for being here, and those of you who are joining us. I see some familiar names. My sister Elsa is on here, my friend Rosie. So thank you for joining us this evening.
Yes, Norma is never alone. When you're a person who has brought so many women along and supported so many women, she's always writing recommendations. No matter where I see her, oh, I have to go, I have to write a recommendation. And I do want to thank Raquel Valles-Senties. And I wanted to say, and I know in the book, there's a very specific narrative that I wrote about all her books in here. So do buy the book. But I did want to show Raquel's art. Can you see it?
Yes,
Yes.
yes.
That's my favorite painting of Norma, Raquel. And all of them, they speak to you. So in complementing the writing, and then you see this image of these women, it just really makes it whole, makes it a whole person. And I'm so grateful to you, Raquel, and for both of you to having thought of doing this, of, you know, because many writers are painters. Many painters are writers. I just doodle. I'm not a painter, but I see how important it is to have that image. And I want to thank you, Raquel. I want to thank your son as well. I think Manuel, right, who got you here. And we want to thank you for your work.
I want to add that Raquel just got named the Poet Laureate from Laredo, Texas. She's also a poet and a short story writer.
I had
And
no idea that she
that
was
just happened this last week. So
wonderful.
congratulations, Raquel.
Congratulations, Raquel. The second question that I have for you is, what do you think is more salient, important about Chicanx literature right now? I know that I've written extensively about all the different topics that we cover in our literature. And one thing that I find so amazing about you, Norma, is that you don't only talk, you do the stuff. I remember us talking about Gloria Anzaldua like 25 years ago. And I was telling you that I used to read with her every Friday. We'd go to this used bookstore, Gloria and I, and read books, read poetry, so we wouldn't have to buy the books, right? And also because she had no money and she was very sick, and they gave her so little in all the institutions that she worked for. And I was sharing this with Norma. And so now we have this incredible conference on Gloria Anzaldua that Norma, yes, she asks for help here and there, but she single-handedly made that international. There's people from Germany, from France, from everywhere, from Africa, trying to get into this conference, to present at this conference that happens every year. And I just want to say that Norma doesn't just, you know, talk about projects. She takes over, and it's usually a very large ball of snow that she brings on, rolls over all of us. But I want to hear what you have to say about Chicanx, Chicana literature right now. What do you see as most salient? Where is it going? I know that we open a lot of doors for others, but I want to hear, where do you think it's going?
Wow. Well, we're opening up even as we speak. There's so many writers and so many wonderful and brilliant scholars doing the work. There's a new book coming out on Sandra Cisneros that gathers essays by scholars as well. It's an anthology out of UT Press. And I know Claire and Karen, who are also on this interview today with their books. I mean, this is just the tip of the iceberg. There are so many. Young adult, novels. That's kind of a field that is just
Yeah.
repleto de autores y autoras que están escribiendo. And that to me is really valuable because the young people become readers. And once you get them hooked, they're going to be readers for life. The other part that I see is the futurist angle with, and I don't want to call it surrealism, but the speculative fiction area where we have some new writers going in that direction in film, but also in just writing, so books. And the poets. I mean, Canto Mundo is alive and well, and there's so many things happening for the poets in the country right now. And of course, I think the political situation demands that writers speak up and write and address the issues that are of our generation, that are here now, that we have to deal with. So that's kind of where I see it happening. I couldn't possibly name all the names of all the writers that are doing things. The other thing that I think this book exemplifies is the crossing of boundaries. Like, it's not an art book. It's not just literary scholarship, it's both. And so blending, approaching things from different directions at once, I think is a new thing, a hybrid. Kind of like what Anzaldua did with her work. It's a hybridization, so you don't stay with only one thing.
The other thing that is very impressive to me, and it's all these people that are not associated with anyone, but they're writers and they're poets. I was just on a tour in LA in the Southwest, and I was promoting the anthology that just came out where Norma also appears, which is Indomitable, that Cristina Herrera and I edited, the first editor of this. And that's at least 50 women. Norma is one of them. And what I read in a lot of very small bookstores, I met Viva Padilla, this woman, a very young woman who owns it's the only Latina owned bookstore. It's basically a room. And she's doing interviews with everyone there. And this very courageous people, Rosa Maria, who owns another bookstore in Boyle Heights, amazing places that have so much energy coming out of them. And then this used to be the 60s and the 70s, and it's coming back again. There's so many small presses that are producing a lot of our authors that never get to the mainstream. And I think that's very important. I wanted to ask you what you're working on right now.
Wow, well, I have several anthologies. One on Tejanidad called Somos Tejanas. Jody Marin, one of my former students, and I are co-editing that. That's coming up in the next year. There's another anthology on La Llorona that's about to come out. Kathleen Alcala co-edited that, and it's a collection of both stories, creative writing, poetry, and critical essays. Again, the hybridity. Yeah. And
yeah,
right, there's other anthologies, but my novel that has been in the works now for years, I'm hoping to finish this summer. It's titled Cantú, Champu, or Hair Matters. And it's set in Laredo, like a lot of my work is, about the border, in a hair salon. And Cantú, the protagonist is Diamond, Diamantina, and it's called Diamonds, Salón de Belleza y Estética Unisex, Diamond. And the characters are the people who come in from the community. It's set during a period of the year when there's the George Washington's birthday celebration. So there are all kinds of things referencing that. That's the big fiesta in Laredo, Texas, if you can imagine. And Raquel knows this well. So there's a lot of characters based on people that I have known and loved, and some who have passed on. I'm just reading a biography of Mrs. Sorrell, who was my high school English teacher. Her son wrote a biography because I want to include her in the novel somehow. So there are all kinds of different characters from the border that are going to be there, that are kind of spotlighted at different times. That's kind of where my focus is right now, aside from reading manuscripts and doing all the other work we do. I just returned from walking the Camino, the short Camino de Frances, Camino de Santiago, with my students over spring break. And I started drafting little kind of portraits of the people I met, like a señora vaquero in Legonde, where Julio Iglesias is from. And so he starts singing like Julio Iglesias. He offered me a cow. So all these characters that I met in that 1 week, I'm thinking of putting them together into a little chapbook.
Wow.
It just doesn't stop, it just keeps coming.
The other genre that I know is up and coming is memoir for Chicana literature. A lot of people are writing the memoir now. One last question, because I think our time is coming up soon. Who are other Chicana writers or Latina writers, intellectual activists that you deem essential, that should be celebrated in our time? Just give us a few names. I know that you don't want to name anyone because then you're missing someone, but just give us a few names so other
There's
people
so many, and there's some young writers. And you know who else? The writers who are writing in Spanish.
Yes, but so people can read or maybe.
Oh, yeah, there's so many of these young writers. Here in San Antonio, there's a Filipina Chicana who has written a brilliant novel about Galveston in a storm. The Last of the Carancahuas is the title of the novel. Her name is Kim Garza, brilliant writer, and is coming up with another one soon because she got a 2-book deal. And then there's Natalia Trigo at UT Arlington, who writes in Spanish and in English. And these are young writers that we haven't heard about, but they're the luminaries of the future. They're the ones that are just coming up. And I really want to highlight those kind of writers. And claro, the writers that have been around for a long time, who are still writing, I guess las veteranas, if you want to call us that. Ana Castillo, Sandra Cisneros, of course, Denise Chavez. By the way, Raquel has in her background the portrait of Denise Chavez that's in the book. There are so many of these wonderful writers that are still there. I mean, Kathleen Alcala from in your neck of the woods, Gabriela, in the Pacific Northwest, and across the country. And then the Latina writers at Cantu and Macondo this summer, we will have Cristina Garcia be one of the faculty members. And her new book, something mapping, I can't remember the title, but I just finished reading it, and it's really creative and innovative, and set in Berlin. I mean, so it's like breaking out of the stereotypes of what Latina or Chicana writing is all about, and covering the world.
All right. Well, with that, we hand over the batuta. Thank you so much. Wonderful. Thanks to all of you.
Thank you, Gabriela.
Hi, that was wonderful. I made a list, so I have to start reading more. Now we move on to our second interview. Our second interview is with author Claire Jimenez, who is a Puerto Rican writer who grew up in Brooklyn and Staten Island. She is the author of the short story collection, Staten Island Stories, which received the 2019 Hornblower Award for a first book from the New York Society Library, and was named a finalist for the Best Latino Book of 2019 by NBC News. In 2020, she co-founded the Puerto Rican Literature Project, a digital archive. What Happened to Ruby Ramirez is her debut novel. Interviewing Claire is Comadre Nidia Marcela. Nidia began her professional career as an architect in Caracas, Venezuela. Not long after arriving in New York City, she decided to pursue a career in television and spent 8 years working for the nation's first public Hispanic television network as a producer, writer, editor, and on-camera talent. She has produced hundreds of hours of programming aimed at creating value for the Hispanic community and has been nominated for five Emmy Awards. She is a partner at Think Happy Media. Comadre Nidia, take it away. Everybody take yourselves off mute.
Thank you, Comadre Maria. Thank you so much. And thank you, Claire Jimenez, for being here and accepting the invitation. Okay, should we start with a quick synopsis of your book? Although I'm pretty sure everybody read it, but let's just refresh our memory quickly, if you can.
Oh, sure. Yes. And before I give the synopsis, I just want to say I'm dear friends with Linda Garcia Merchant. Norma, she's like, tell Norma I said hi. She said she is such good people. She's like, she's in Chicago at a funeral, unfortunately. Otherwise, she would be here. But she said, tell her I said hi. So yeah, so synopsis of my book, What Happened to Ruthie Ramirez, is a novel. It's set in it begins in 1996 in Staten Island, New York. It's about the Ramirez family. In 1996, a 13-year-old girl in Staten Island goes missing. She's one of the sisters, Ruthie. And 12 years later, the sisters are grown up and they're watching a reality TV show. And they see a woman who looks remarkably like Ruthie. And so they set out to figure out, is this actually her?
Thank you so much. Yes, and you have to read it to know what happened. So anyway, well, for me, it was very special to read this book. It's a very particular, very interesting, particular way of mixing humor with loss and violence and courage and authenticity. And on top of that, with a very strong Latino flavor that is so special. And it's in Staten Island, my corner of the world. Oh,
Are you in
fabulous.
Staten Island too?
I am right now.
Oh
Yes,
my God. Where in Staten Island are you?
right next to the mall, the biggest one, Heart.
Oh, yes. Staten Island Mall. I'm very familiar.
Yeah. And it's probably one of the few malls in the country that is actually growing, not
Oh,
shrinking,
yeah.
thriving, and doing very well. So this book reminds me a little bit a quote from Michelle Williams, a singer who said once, grief is like a moving river. It's always changing.
Yeah.
So since we are all comadres here, I would like to start with a teeny quote that you made in the book about comadres. Specifically, one of the daughters of Dolores, one of her daughters, is looking at her mother talking to one of her girlfriends and wondering, these two women are very close. Since when they became comadres? Something like that, she said, and it really caught my attention. Like, I really would like to know, what do you mean with comadres? What does comadre means to you, for you?
Oh yeah. So I mean, in that particular scene, so the mother in this story, Dolores, she goes to church, a Pentecostal church, and she befriends this older Puerto Rican woman named Irene, and who becomes sort of, her rock after her husband dies, and Dolores is grieving her daughter who's disappeared. And so I think it's Nina who actually says this, and Irene is kind of a trickster character. And she kind of like messes with the sisters. And she's like, unbeknownst to us, Irene had reached comadre status while we were arguing. And so for me, I think it's like that signifies like the power of friendship. But also I think I was listening, this is from Melissa Cosaquino, who's another Puerto Rican author who was posting about this in just on social media, and she had said something that I thought was so powerful, that the word comadre, right, there's not really equivalent in English, right? And this idea of it's like, yes, I guess you could translate co-mother or something like this, but it's also like sister friendship. It's like something so strong, right? And so and I'm really trying to explore relationships between women in this novel. And so this is why Irene shows up. I'm trying to explore all of those themes.
Fabulous. Yes. We also try to define what it means to be comadres all the time. Okay. So let's get a little bit into a very interesting topic that you also cover in your book is that oftentimes women, women of color, are represented like caricatures in the media, playing into stereotypes. Hmm. How should writers and other content creators approach creating such characters in a more realistic and nuanced way? What do you think?
So so the novel kind of, there's two questions, right? The first novel being the premise, which is, is this woman on TV, on this like sort of ridiculous reality TV show, is this Ruthie, right? And then the second question is, are these real representations of these women on TV, right? And so really, this is a story about a missing girl, but it's also a story about missing stories and missing representations, right? And so I use a reality TV show to also explore stereotypical representations. What representations of Black and brown women are even available to us in pop culture, right? When do we see ourselves? As opposed to, the disparity in the coverage of when a Black or brown or an Indigenous girl goes missing as opposed to a white girl, right? And so I'm really trying to approach that topic through all those angles.
Interesting. Thank you. Let's see. I have another question here. And this book does a great job portraying the sort of code of ethics of the streets of the Staten Island. And it's funny because when I was reading, I kind of hear in the back of my mind so many dialogues and conversations that I hear in the bus and everywhere I go, in the mall. It's like this is a very authentic Staten Island style way of talking. So even though the characters can be rough, there is a line that everybody knows not to cross.
Mm-hmm.
And they have this code of ethics that is very strong and very solid, and it is like a tacit agreement. So can we talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, between the sisters, correct? Right? Yeah. So I think, and for those who have sisters, I grew up with four sisters, so you can imagine the types of fights that happen in the house with four sisters. But there's a way in which it's like, I can drag my sister, but you can't, right? So like, but it's also like you have this fierce connection with each other, even when you have also these conflicts with each other. And so I really wanted to think about that. I really wanted to also think about how when you grow up in the same house with somebody, there becomes this sort of internal vocabulary that you share just from growing up, and sometimes it's not even verbal, right? Like if you and your sister are sitting down and somebody else does something a little suspect, you might just look at each other, right? And just like there's a whole, you may not even need to say anything, but right, what the other is thinking. And so I really wanted to examine that closeness, and also like thinking about how you can survive or manage tragedy, even with histories of trauma, even with histories of intergenerational trauma, right? Through sisterhood.
And it's a beautiful way how they support each other, how they sustain each other's in a way that is just so sisterhood, so sisters anyway.
Thank you.
Another maybe less obvious theme is in this book is love. The love between the members of the family that is reflected in the hope to see Rudy again, despite them being so tough on the outside. So, what can you share about that?
Yeah, you know, there's so I think there's a part at the end where the Jessica is a young mother, and so she has her daughter is, you know, an infant, and the daughter wakes up crying, and the family goes upstairs. The mother, Nina and Jessica, they go upstairs and they say, "Don't be scared. It's all right, baby girl. You are loved." And I ended that chapter with the words "you are loved" because I thought it was really important, you know, to even just that sentence, you, like, to the reader too, because I thought a lot about how there might be young women reading this, right? Or maybe not even young, it doesn't matter, who may feel kind of lost or alienated, right? And to that reminder that you are loved is so important in a world that, frankly, I mean, I don't want to say right now because it always has been ugly, right? You know, genocide has always been happening in this world, right? Like, and it is, and that reminder of love, that reminder of joy is so important. So I really wanted to think about that.
Mm. And that is one beautiful moment, but there are many others between Dolores and the daughters and different instances. But it's always this very pure, very authentic love that it really touched my heart in a very special way.
Thank you.
Um, we have a few questions from the Denver Book Club. And the first one is, did the family get notified about Rudy? Did the family get notified after Rudy was found? That's the first question from
Yeah, so
the
it's
Denver Book Club.
sort of a sneaky, it happens in the end. Sorry if there's
Yes.
spoilers, but
Yes.
it happens in the end, you know, but it's snuck in there a little bit. I wanted to give a resolution for folks who, you know, it's funny, I was talking to my agent, the first drafts, for a few drafts of it. She was like, this can't be called What Happened to Ruthie Ramirez, and we don't know what happened to Ruthie Ramirez, you know. So, but so we, you know, but I always knew the end was going to be the end. And so I always knew that I wanted to include that. But it's sneaky. It happens quick because really this is a story that's about the impact of that grief and that absence on this family. And also there's a moment where Jessica says, you know, every time I think about what happened to Ruthie, I'm really just thinking about what happened to me. And so it's exploring these women's experiences with violence, um, you know, femicide, you know, colonialism, racism, like as they're trying to figure out what happened to their daughter, what happened to their sister.
Mhm. Yes, and I have to say, what happened to Rudy has a lot to do with the new mall by the ferry. That's all I'm going to say. Okay, another question from the Denver's Club is, have you been approached for a movie?
Yeah, so actually we option the rights through Paramount Plus. So we'll see what happens. Option my agent is very was like, Claire, just because it got option doesn't mean that it's gonna happen. So just, you know, she's like, I've had lots of my authors get their stuff optioned and none of them has ever made it to a movie, you know. So she's like, just take that money and enjoy it for a little bit, you know. I paid off a credit card, so so we'll see, maybe. I don't know.
I really hope so. It's going to
Thank
be a
you.
fabulous, fabulous, maybe a series. Who knows?
Thank you so much.
So, what are you the most proud of about this book? Is it a favorite
Oh,
character? Do you have a favorite character, maybe?
you know, there's it was just it's a finalist for the Penn Faulkner, so that was a really big moment for me. So I'm very proud about that. But I think one of my proudest moments is I've heard this various times for people. They were like, Claire, you wrote a book about Puerto Ricans for Puerto Ricans, you know, and I hear that, and that makes me feel like such pride that I didn't sort of. I think sometimes there's the temptation, especially if you get a book out of the big five, the Main Street, whatever, to write it and explain, you know, your stories are written in a type of way that's palatable to white audiences. And I didn't want to do that. And I resisted that. And so that makes me really proud. And also, you know, sometimes I get these emails or messages from people who are like, you know, this feels like my family, like this happened to me, you know, and that is the biggest compliment for me.
What I would say is very Puerto Rican, but it's very Latino. It's a very Latino book because I'm from Venezuela and I totally felt all the message was also for us.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I don't know about Colombians or Dominicans, but definitely for Puerto Ricans and Venezuelans.
Oh no, I love my Latina sisters. Yes, it's for everybody. I mean, like, you know, I think with Puerto Rican, sometimes, you know, there's like this you know, expectation for it to be the West Side Story, you know, like, and I think resisting that it was something that was important. But yeah, it's true that there's between all of our cultures we share you know, a lot of commonalities, and so and a lot of challenges, you know.
I see. I don't know how much more time we have. It says 2 more questions. I'm not sure when she sent this test because I already see it's 8:40. I I still don't know who is your favorite character, Claire?
Oh, I love all of them, but I really love Irene. I love the trickster, Dolores' comadre. I think she was the funnest to write. I just loved her, you know, messing with the girls. And like, there's one, I won't spoil it, but there's Dolores and Irene sneak into a club to try to figure out if this
Yeah.
reality TV star is actually Ruthie. So, and that was extraordinarily fun to write. It was such a fun scene.
Yeah, that was very fun. You're right. I agree. Okay, so at some point, one of the daughters reflects on the real meaning of telling a lie, and it declares that Dolores, the mother, had helped her to understand that a lie is an expression of lack of respect toward the person who is being lied to. At this moment in American history, given the current political discourse, what would Dolores have to say about this? What do you think?
Oh, I think she would say,
Mm.
well, I think she would be like, y'all are a bunch of phonies, you know. Yeah. I mean, for a lot of our politicians and people out here acting crazy. And I think she would probably, I think actually she would probably be devastated because I think a lot of the news right now would feel cutting to her losing her own daughter. So yeah.
Mhm. Interesting. Many of the stories in this book are narrated in first person, and they are truly intimate and touching. Why did you decide to tell those stories in such a way, in that way, in first person?
I wanted it to, so it rotates through multiple perspectives through a first person narrative through the mother, the sister, Jessica, Nina, and the missing sister to Ruthie. And I wanted it to be, I think often of, you know, growing up in my titi's voices in the kitchen as they're telling stories, and like sort of like this polyvocal collision of these voices, like how it becomes a chorus, but also how there's dissonance. And I wanted these narratives to kind of rub up against each other so that you were passing, almost like passing the baton from narrative to narrative as they figure out what has happened. And so I'm thinking a lot about voice, and I'm thinking a lot about what does the mother know, you know, as a woman, as an older woman who has migrated between Puerto Rico and New York and is part of that circular migration. What does she know that the daughters don't know? But also, what do the daughters who grew up and were born in the diaspora know that the mother doesn't, right? And how can we look at all of these point of views to think about what has happened to Ruthie?
Mhm. Beautiful. And by the way, my favorite character is Dolores.
Thank you.
Hands down, I love her. It
Thank you
reminds
so
me,
much.
it reminds me of my grandma so much. Quite amazing. Okay, we run out of time. Thank you so much,
Thank
Kelly.
you.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you
Thank you
so
so
much.
much. It's been a
And
pleasure.
please write
Honored to
another
be here.
book. Write another book, please.
I
Can read it.
thank you.
Thank
Thank
you so much.
Thank you, ladies. That was very nice. We've now moved on to our third interview. Our final interview, we are delighted to welcome Las Comadres Book Club's Assistant Coordinator, Karen Gonzales, who is a native of Denver, Colorado. She is the author of a children's chapter book, The Mystery of La Llorona and Mr. Lloron, and many nonfiction essays. She is co-founder of Calma and was featured as a local leader in History Colorado Center's 2019 Year of the Chicana exhibit and the Return of the Corn Mothers, a 2022 traveling photographic exhibit known for the preservation of Chicana and Chicano culture. Interviewing Karen is Comadre Gabriela Chavarria. Welcome. Gabriela was born and raised in Mexico City and came to the U.S. in 1990 to become a biologist. She worked for the Denver Museum of Nature and Sciences while living in Denver, where she became a member of Las Comadres and Friends Book Club. She is currently the director of the Burke Museum of Natural History and Culture in Seattle, Washington. She enjoys the outdoors and she loves reading. Take it away, Comadre Gabriela.
Thank you, Maria. Thank you. It's wonderful to be back in the group. I didn't realize how much I miss seeing, the comadres and reading the books and hearing the authors. And I'm especially honored tonight because Comadre Karen introduced me and invited me to join Las Comadres in Denver. So what a great pleasure, Karen, to interview you with your book that I've heard so much about, that I have enjoyed very much. And, before I launch into the questions, I want you to share with the group a little summary without giving away a lot on the book. I think a lot of us know about La Llorona, but your book, presented us with a wonderful story for young adults. So share with us a little summary.
Okay, well, thank you, Comadre. The story takes place in the 1960s in a Spanish-Mexican Jewish neighborhood. It's told in first person, the voices of the children. The protagonist is Darla. She's a third grader and she doesn't like to wear her new cat-eye glasses. So her and her friend hear that La Llorona is appearing in the gully down the block here in Colorado, in Denver. And strange things start, her friend's older brother and sister tell her that she can disguise herself during the day and hypnotize you in a trance if you stare at something too long, and it could be her. And she'll put you under a spell, and she grabs Mexican kids. So strange things start to happen when the kids meet a new friend, and she talks them into going down into the gully where they find La Llorona during the day in disguise. And they come up and tell the older brother and sister, that they found La Llorona, and she even follows them. So they kind of get in trouble, but the older brother and sister tell them that now someone else found La Llorona, and it's Mr. Lloron, and he's the father of their child, the baby that disappeared, and that he can also disguise himself, and that now that he found her, they're going to get married and have this big wedding and invite everyone, where people will think they're going to a wedding of somebody they know, but it'll be La Llorona and Mr. Lloron in disguise, and they're going to hypnotize everyone and steal the children. So what happens is one of the girls gets invited to the wedding, and after she goes, they never see her anymore. So they start thinking it really happened. And that's where the mystery starts, because one of the girls starts, well, Darla starts seeing her, you know, and they think it's because she's not wearing her glasses, but there's a house with the face in the story that the kids start finding clues that maybe, you know, she's in that house, and also Mr. Lloron and La Llorona could be in the house. So that's kind of where the mystery starts.
That's great. That's great. And, you know, I love, you know, I think many of us grew up, you know, I grew up in Mexico, but I always heard about La Llorona. And, you know, we saw La Llorona also being portrayed in Coco, the movie. But we hear very little about Mr. Lloron. So it was kind of like a fun little addition to the book and to the story. And, you know, one of the questions that I had for you is, how much of the book is about your story growing up with La Llorona?
At least half of the story, about probably 50 to 70%, was my encounters. I wrote a memoir, nonfiction. It was called Finding the Lady Llorona, in the Yamagda Review, issue 5, Race, Class, and Gender. And I guess after I wrote the story, I didn't put everything in there, you know, like about Mr. Lloron, but I just have read other short stories by other people, you know, encounters with the Weeping Woman and other books written about La Llorona, but mine just seemed different, you know, and I just thought it would be more fun for it's a children's chapter book. And, you know, that I did really hear about Mr. Lloron, and a lot of those encounters actually happened, but I put a little magic realism in it and shape-shifting of some of the characters. So it becomes a mystery.
Are you Darla?
Yes, I'm in a way. Yeah. I had cat-eye glasses I never wanted to wear, but yeah, but we went down to the gully, and that's how I got my story, inspired by experiences.
So your book has been very, very well received, particularly in the Denver area, because you are so well known in Denver, beloved not only by the Comadres, but by a lot of the Latino community. What are your hopes for the book? Who else do you want to reach? Because I think, you know, we have, you know, a duty that to share the book with the younger kids. I think a lot of us adults are really enjoying the book, but I don't know how many of us are really sharing it with the group that you are originally targeting for. Are you doing a lot of readings with the younger audiences?
Well, I've told the story at 3 La Llorona festivals, and, you know, children have come. I told the story at a high school recently, and you know, that's probably my hopes, to start getting it in the schools. It's in the Denver Public Library now, and I'm hoping to write a screenplay. I'm writing, you know, trying to write it into a script now, and I'm submitting it to competitions. So I'm hoping, you know, maybe it could be a film or on stage someday, and we'll see. I don't know.
No, I think I think that will be, you know, just wonderful. You're a great writer, and you need to keep writing, and you need to keep sharing these stories that you grew up with, because we need to hear more from the voices of, you know, our Latinos, our local Latinos. You know, I came from Mexico, so I kind of like don't count. My stories are from Mexico, but I love hearing the stories from, you know, the Latinos that are growing, that grew up in this country. So do you have any plans to continue to write more of your, you know, stories from where you were a child?
Well, I did write a nonfiction essay. It'll be in an anthology coming up, Ramas y Raíces, The Best of Calma. hopefully in June it'll be published. So it has about 23 other writers from the Colorado Alliance of Latino Mentors and Authors. So, and it's, well, it takes place when I'm about 17. But another experience I had, a scary experience. It's called The Ranch, and it takes place in New Mexico.
And, you know, you've been doing a lot of interviews. I was very impressed. I don't know how many of you know, but she was interviewed in YouTube, and she did the whole interview in Spanish. And it was really incredible. I know you were a little quizzy about, you know, doing it, but you just, you know, did, you know, just wonderful. So thank you for sharing your voice all across, not only in English, but also in Spanish. And, you know, talking more about the book, you know, I love the story of the children, and, you know, I never like scary books or stories, but your book really, you know, that magical way that you presented the story really drives you into it, and you really want to be part of it. You really want to be with the children as they, you know, they're going down into the creek. And one of the questions we got from one of the clubs, actually the Denver club, was somebody that asked about Gloria, and if Gloria was homeless, and if she was related to the hobo.
Oh, okay. Well, it sounds like Darla, you know, from hearing the neighbors say that they did see a girl and the mother in the house and a hobo. I guess it's possible, you know, at least she was in a house and not homeless at the time. But, you know, if now they moved on, I guess the other question is, you know, is she a spirit? Was Gloria a ghost? So it's kind of like the kids tried to solve the mystery, but there were still questions. But, you know, they would come up with explanations that, yeah, it's possible, you know, she could have been homeless and really did live in that house, because they found clues, you know, that she was there. But if they moved on, yeah, I mean, I guess now she probably is homeless. I'm not sure. It's just kind of a mystery still, part of that.
Will there be a sequel?
It's right now, I don't have one in mind, but, you know, I keep thinking I could come up with one, and it's possible, but I'm kind of trying to maybe put out a children's picture book next. I'm hoping to. I have an idea. So maybe after that, since I don't.
You know, I forgot to acknowledge that, you know, the illustrations in the book are really fun. And I think they were done by Dolores Guerrero, who, I don't know if you can talk a little bit about Dolores and her, you know, her illustration and her process of working with her.
Oh, so yes. I met Dolores through one of our Calma members. It's her sister, and she is a famous Chicana artist in LA. So she actually came to Denver and stayed with me for 2 months. And I, you know, explained to her what illustrations I wanted. So yeah, she drew the illustrations, but she does murals, Chicana murals in LA. I think she has a Wikipedia page also.
So what other things you want us to learn about your writing process?
Well, I guess just, you know, everyone has a story, and, you know, people should come up with their stories, you know, put them in writing and preserve our written words of our stories for our younger people, you know, to read, whether they're fiction or nonfiction. But the nonfiction is really a, you know, learning experience of the olden days. And I think kids should learn more about how it used to be, and, you know, about our ancestors. But yeah, I mean, I just encourage everyone to write their own story because, you know, if not for everyone, at least for their families.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that, Karen. I think, that the theme today was sharing and, and continue to learn from all of us by storytelling. This has just been really wonderful. And, and I'm so honored to know you. And, and I really enjoy reading the book. And I hope you all have an opportunity, not only to read this one, but to read the 3 books from this month because they were really incredible. Thank you, Karen.
Gracias, Gabriela. Great to see you and everyone. Comadres, thank you.
Wow. 3 amazing, so different books. It's like you'll be reading for a long time. Our thanks to the authors and their publishers, University of Arizona Press, Grand Central Publishing, 303 Publications, Inc., for their generous donation of books to our early registrants. Thank you as well to our interviewers, Comadres Gabriela Gutierrez, Nidia Marsala, and Gabriela Chavarria. We thank our audience for taking the time to join us tonight. And to those who submitted questions, we'd like to thank all our volunteers. And to those who submitted questions. And we would like to thank all our volunteers, without whom this book club and all the associated work would not happen. Mil gracias. And please remember to support our authors by writing a review of their books on sites like Amazon, Goodreads, Barnes & Noble, etc. These reviews carry weight with the publishers and as well as other readers. And on our Latino Lit website, there are some examples of reviews that you could write. It's really not that hard to do. So why don't you check that out and every one of you write a review. Buy books to support our authors. And if your library doesn't have one, ask them to order it. And please attend your virtual local book club and bring a friend or two. Remember, our book club is open to men and women and everybody, all readers. We want everyone to participate. The books for April of 2024 are Flesh and Spirit, Confessions of a Young Lord by Felipe Luciano Flores, and Miss Paula by Melissa Rivero. Again, thank you all for your continued support of our book club and our Latino literature. Authors, you all were marvelous tonight. I really can't wait to get back to the books I haven't finished. And please join us in celebrating Las Comadres and Friends National Latino Book Club throughout the year by buying books and supporting Latino authors. Good night, and always read Latino Lit.
Gracias.
Thank you so much.